Hi, this is Conversations with Charles Bursell. Today talking with Patti Potter Fitchett. She's a funeral director and a columnist and an old friend of mine from theater days. We did theater together many years ago, and with the help of social media, able to stay in touch over the years. And I thought I'd invite her in to talk about her new profession, funerals, planning, and whether you're going to be cremated or buried, where you're going to be scattered, the role of gallows humor, all of that. So I hope you enjoy the conversation with Patti Potter Fitchett. Did you do any theater after we met? Did you stay in theater?
Oh, tons, yes.
Okay,
yeah,
so you
yeah.
stayed in theater.
And that's even the roundabout way I came to my present incarnation as a human being in job opportunities as a funeral director. So it all came about through theater, yeah.
You can ask almost anybody who's in a profession how they came to be in their profession.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so many of them will have these circuitous roots.
Right.
So you came to the funeral profession.
Right.
Let's get our terms straight here.
Okay.
What's your title?
I'm a funeral director. I'm a licensed funeral director.
Okay.
That means I can do anything that a funeral director can do.
All right, and you came to be a funeral director somehow through theater.
Right.
I got to know how that happened.
Well, I got my original bachelor's degree, that the throwaway one you get after high school.
Right.
That was in theater arts, and then I went on and married, had kids. I was a stay-at-home mom for many years, and I kept doing community theater and stuff after my kids were old enough. I always stayed in it. And then when I started to get back into the job market, a friend of mine who was a funeral director, he said, "Oh, you've got such a great personality. I bet you could sell pre-need burial insurance." And I was like, okay, so I took all these insurance classes and got this license and stuff. Well, I just sucked at it. I have no closing.
Okay.
People would come in and, I would meet with them and I would say, oh, they just weren't interested. My boss would say, their checkbook was in their titty pocket.
To be a good salesperson, you have to have that great personality,
but
you also have to be a killer.
Right, exactly.
And you didn't have that.
I just didn't have that. But at the same token, when my kids were little, I had gotten involved in a Unitarian church in the town where I live and had, done some worship services there and readings and stuff, because again, the theater background comes in really handy. And so one day at the funeral home, there was a family, they want a funeral service for Dad, but Dad doesn't believe in God. And they were all like running around agog, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I could do something for that, and I put a little something together and doing that, being kind of a party planner, if you will, that didn't require any license. You were just helping these people out. Exactly. So I ended up doing that at that particular funeral home for the next 10 years. They used me as their, solo officiant, when people didn't have a clergy person, and I really enjoyed it. I've probably done several hundred funerals.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
In no particular order here, I'll ask this just because you brought it up. The deceased didn't believe in God.
Right.
And this is something I've always kind of wondered about. How important is that to keep the deceased wishes in mind? And I guess the real question is, who's the funeral for? Is it for the mourners or is it for the dead guy?
Well, there's two ways about that as a funeral director now. Is one, as a funeral director, who is my client, and that's the family. Mm-hmm. But it's not usually as much of a tug of war as you would think.
Oh, it's not.
If the family has a clergy person and they go to church all the time, then I don't meet with them to plan a service. Then it's churchy and they've got a pastor or a priest or a rabbi, and that person does it within their faith traditions, and that's how they do it. It's where, Dad didn't believe in God. So a lot of times the first question I ask people when I sit down to meet with them about a service is, well, how religious do you want it? 0 is no mention of God at all. 10 is everything straight out of the Bible. What do you want? And so, they look around the table. 2? 2?
Oh, okay.
3?
It's like a doctor asking you to quantify your pain.
Quantify your pain.
1 through 10.
Right. So, and again, I'm not, if I know a person has a Catholic background, even if they're not a practicing Catholic, I may use traditional Catholic prayers, like just at the end. It just gives that, like the Hail Mary and the Our Father and, the eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord part, you know. And I asked a priest one time if it's all right that I use Catholic prayers. I'm obviously not any kind of ordained Catholic clergy person. And he said, "Oh, honey, as long as you don't transubstantiate anything, you can say it. You can say anything you want." So I promised him that I wouldn't
overstep your bounds.
Yes, all the bread would remain bread around me.
Okay. So the I guess the answer to the question is, I guess it's mostly for, like you said, your client is the family.
Right.
That bothers me a little bit, though, because that puts money in the driver's seat.
Well, but...
Or does it?
But again, if the deceased didn't believe in God...
And then they have a big churchy funeral.
But then, again, there's so many layers of, it's that 0 to 10 thing. They want some kind of familiarity. They want some kind of... he's above you, looking down on you now, the continuity.
I think about, and everybody does this. It's only natural. It's human nature. I think about my own funeral.
Right.
And I am very much an atheist / agnostic Spinozan. Okay?
Right.
If you know Spinoza, look up Spinoza's idea on the afterlife, and I won't go through the whole
Spinoza
thing.
and funeral planning.
I'll give you a little homework assignment. I'm a Spinozan when it comes to the afterlife. And I've got a very churchy family. Mm-hmm. Some of them are very hardcore Catholic. A couple others are kind of evangelical. Right. And they're going to get up at my funeral and say a bunch of churchy, gaudy things. And I don't know where I'm going to be. If I'm in a position where I can hear this, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. I'll probably be a little pissed off.
Yeah.
Like, you're not honoring me.
Right. And again, that happens less than you'd think.
Okay,
also.
so I should stop worrying about it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's the bottom line.
And sometimes it's sometimes you're honored by more than one community when you die.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and I'm not necessarily a theist either. So if I were going to pray at somebody's funeral and I knew that their family would be comforted by prayer, I might say something like, Creator, please cradle the distress of this good family.
All right. I'll stop worrying about this too much.
In the name of what we live and move and have our being.
Do you have a lot of... are there many occasions, when the deceased has done a lot of their own planning? They kind of call the shots on how the funeral's going to go?
As far as the specifics, whether you're going to be buried or cremated, what casket you're going to use, sometimes people will leave like a list of hymns that they want. And that cracks me up too. Grandpa wasn't religious at all. What hymns did he want? Oh, Amazing Grace, Old Rugged Cross, Old Rugged Cross, really?
That is a good song. That's a damn good song. There's a John Prine version of that song that I really like.
Yeah.
Because... Again, you and I met a million years ago doing theater.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of theater after you and I parted ways. And I was a director. And so basically, I want to direct my funeral.
Right. Exactly.
And this is terrible, but I want to write the whole thing out. I want to just plan everything.
Exactly. And again, that's exactly why... not to toot my own horn, but that's exactly why I'm so good at what I do, where families are like, oh my God. I have people come up to me all the time. That's the best funeral I ever went to. I mean, and they're weeping. And, that was so much like him.
I've sung at many funerals. That's my...
Yeah. Well, live music
I love
always
singing at
more
funerals.
Effective. Yeah. I love, I'm licensed to perform weddings, but can't stand them. Much prefer funerals.
What? You know what? Me too. I love funerals. Are we weird? What is that? It's just such a What's going on there? Why do we love funerals?
Because at funerals, what really matters is the focus of the event. And so by your words or your music, you're adding to what matters.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of times at a wedding, as the officiant, I'm just the prop. I'm there,
Okay.
You have very little to do with the meaning of the day, and the showmanship is so much, I don't know. I think a lot of that gets lost.
The other thing about a funeral, we're doing a show coming up on my other podcast, Stream of Consciousness Talk Radio Theater, which you and I have spoken about, on the topic of happiness. And I've been researching the topic, and one of the things about happiness is the idea of poignancy, to be poignant. In other words, happiness isn't just fun. That's such a shallow way to think of happiness.
It's not just joy.
You can have that simultaneous sadness and happiness that is such a depth of feeling. So that's why they can be so happy.
Oh, I mean, you hear the best stories about people because it is for the people left behind. It's interesting to see the things that they give meaning to. People at every funeral, Mom was the best cook in the world. She was the best cook in the world. And those words are such a shallow way to say, Mom made it feel like home. Mom nourished us and enriched us. Mom taught us community. Mom taught us life skills. Mom taught us to put our dishes in the sink. All of that is encapsulated in my mom was the best cook in the world. So there is such a poignancy. That's a very good way to put it. And poignancy is so different than sadness or grief. It is that smile in the middle. Sometimes people will come in and they're making funeral arrangements with me, and we'll just be laughing our asses off. And they always stop and say, "Are we really weird? Is this really bad? Is this bad? Should we be laughing?" And they're looking around. It's like, this is your experience. Whatever you feel. And sometimes I think again, I don't want to bash religion, but so many of the rituals around death and funerals have become so rote and meaningless. I went to the funeral of a friend's brother who died very suddenly, and the priest never mentioned his name, never mentioned him by name.
Wow. Through
the whole, I mean, this is a devout Catholic family, and I guess, but we expect more from that now. We want to hear their favorite song. We want to hear the story about, when they were up deer hunting. We want to hear the story about when Dad met Mom, right after World War II.
Sure.
That's what you want.
It's funny when I go to a funeral, as a theater director, I'm constantly critiquing the event. It's like, less dead time between speakers, please. Could you have this better plan?
Right. Did you not know you were next, Melinda?
And yeah, exactly. And Uncle Gene gets up there and he just goes on way too long. It's like, don't you have any sense of how this should go? It's like, please let me direct this.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That can be just horrible. So you help people with that.
Yeah, sometimes it does train wreck a little bit. But,
On the funny thing, laughing, I got to tell you this. My dad died when I was 19 years old. That's a pretty tough time for your dad to die. And it was pretty devastating.
Yeah.
Something happened to me the night before the funeral at the viewing, I guess they call it.
Yeah.
Where I just found everything hilarious. I was in, I guess, a state of shock or whatever was happening, but I felt like I was seeing the world like I'd put on special glasses.
Right.
And I was seeing things that I didn't normally see, like it was some kind of drug-induced, whatever was going on.
Yeah.
I just found genuine humor in almost everything, in how Aunt Joy did her makeup, or how somebody was, eating a cookie funny, or whatever it was. I just found everything hilarious. And, oh my God, the guilt I felt.
People often who have lost somebody recently talk about that they can't believe that the rest of the world is still kind of going on, and that for them everything is 180-degree different. Every aspect of their life is being changed in ways they can't even imagine. And sometimes the enormity of that, it's kind of like, it's almost like a hysteria in processing,
Hysteria and processing. Yeah. Because in the years since, I've gone back many times in my mind to try to explain that to myself, try to understand it. I have, like everybody else, I got 1,000 Facebook friends, and my two funniest Facebook friends are you and a friend of mine named Bill out in California, and he is a funeral director.
No.
Yes.
Unhealthy coping mechanisms. Yep.
What, is there an explanation for this, or should we just leave that?
You gotta be a people person. Imagine, you're going into the funeral home and it's you and all your sisters and all your brothers, and you haven't agreed on anything except, there were lumps in the gravy in 1978. And now I gotta, sit down with all of you and help you figure out what all of you want, what's going to make all of you happy. And then I got to figure out who's going to pay for it. So I mean, so then money comes into it, which, families just love to talk about money. Yeah. So, that entryway into, if you can make people feel at ease, if you can make a little joke,
with your clients, with the families.
Oh, definitely.
But when they're not around, I imagine there's some gallows humor, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. You see stuff. I have a little Facebook page that's just funeral director friends that I went to MATC with. And so that
would horrify the rest of us, right?
Right. Oh, yes. I mean, ethics violations if you said this, and this kind of things.
And there's no getting around it. I guess that just is part of it just goes with the territory, right? It's just the nature of what you do.
Right.
Have you had anybody close to you? Mom, dad, family?
When they say life is circular, my mom found out she was pregnant with me about 3 weeks after my father died suddenly.
Wow.
So I never knew my dad. So there was always that sort of that specter of death. I think back to, I was obviously born into a family that was mourning. I can only imagine the household. I was born 1960. My mom's a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. And suddenly she's got a 10-year-old and a newborn. But that loss somehow, though, I never felt like it was my loss. Mm-hmm. Because it was, again, something non-quantitative. Yeah. It was something that I never knew. So I've had, certainly aunts and uncles, grandparents, but so I've just got my mom, and I've still got her.
Okay. So you really haven't experienced this yet?
No.
Wow.
No. I often think that my personality came from like, if I was funny, if I could break through that depression, that funk, I'm guessing that would be the times when I got reactions as a baby and as a child, a toddler and a child.
Because, as you said, you were born into this house of mourning.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's...
My mother has shared with me that when she went to the doctor, she's feeling poorly after her husband's funeral. And she went to the doctor and he said, well, you're pregnant. And she said, yeah, I don't want to be. You do what you need to do.
Oh, really?
And he gave her like a series of injections. You need to come back once a week for these injections. Now, I don't know what they were, but I think what they gave her was time, and then, I mean, it was 1960 again. So, and then they were like, nope.
Wait a minute. What kind of injections?
I have no idea. B12. They weren't like to to help her abort a baby.
Oh, I thought that's what you meant. Like
I think that's what she thought they meant at the time, because she was like,
well, this is very interesting, because is that what they meant her to think? In other words,
I think so.
Wow.
I think they were just trying to buy her some time.
So they led her, just so this is clear, they led her to believe that they were inducing like a miscarriage.
Like a miscarriage. Yes.
But they really weren't. They were just duping her to give her time. At least that's your theory.
Right.
Or you were stronger than the injections.
Yeah.
Go get them. Good for you. You beat them. That's quite a story.
Yeah. Yep.
So you do all the physical stuff as well.
Sure. Yeah. You got to be licensed for all of that.
In your industry, are there people who specialize? Like, I'm only out front with the family, or I'm only in the lab, or whatever you call it, with doing the physical stuff. Are there people who specialize, or do most people?
Well, everybody has to be licensed to do everything, but there are certainly people. Everybody's got their specialty. I'm definitely better with families than I am in the prep room.
But you do work in the prep room.
Right. And the place where I work, we probably do over 75% cremation. So we don't do as much embalming and body preparation as some other funeral homes do. But you do all of that. But my strength is, but I go on calls. I'm on call every other night, every other weekend. Somebody calls in the middle of the night. I hop in the van and go get them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that ever going to go away completely? The whole, embalming and open casket, the full body burial, that just has to go away, right? Doesn't it?
Well,
is that ever going to be a thing of the past?
It is. Oh, it is. And in the funeral industry, the people who aren't adapting are really feeling it. Now, we're built around the supposition that 75% of our business is going to be cremation. So then we can do a full funeral. We can do the full thing. But, we do less and less of it every year. Some people don't want to be buried. There's a lot of expense. I mean, a casket and a vault and cemetery property. Plus, then after you buy the property, then you have to pay opening and closing costs. That means what you pay to dig the hole and cover it back up.
Oh, it's not opening. I thought you meant like buying a house.
No,
Literally
like
digging and filling
the hole. Right.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, and so casket, vault, headstone, plot.
Yeah.
It's all plus the opening and closing. You're looking at about $10,000.
It's all a little bit crazy, isn't it?
And you haven't even gotten a prayer card or a thank you note. I mean, that's none of that. An obituary. So,
and plus, it's environmentally, it's just heinous. Environmentally,
right. Yeah, in a sealed tin box.
And the embalming fluids and. It just has to go away. And I'm happy to hear you say that you think it is going away.
The one way that we've really capitalized on that is that we've done a lot more of what we call a traditional cremation. And the thing about the open casket viewing is that people want to see Aunt Lois again. That's how they grew up with it. That's again, I belong to a Unitarian church, and I don't think we've ever had a body in the church.
Right.
Or we did once, and the minister was like, what do I say at the cemetery? I've never been to the cemetery.
Yeah.
But
that's not her though. That's not her that you can see. I'm not. I
but
told you already.
She is. She's in her best dress. She's got nail polish and lipstick.
I already told you I'm not a religious person, but I'm telling you that's not Aunt Betty.
So
you can just tell just by looking at her.
Yeah.
Any open casket funeral I've ever been to, that is not the person who I knew at all. That's just like the suitcase they were carrying around. I mean, that's
right. And why would you put their suitcase on display?
I'm not religious, but I'm telling you, they're not there. In any respect, and it's just kind of gross. And you make them, and you guys do. You funeral directors, you do your best.
Right.
With the makeup and all of that, you do the best you can. But
It's very funny because part of the training that you get is in cosmetizing, and so it's all from back in the day when everybody had an open casket
Yeah.
funeral. So we had to learn to like make an ear out of wax in case somebody's missing an ear. And while I'm thinking, well, if they're missing an ear, it's going to be closed casket. I'm sorry.
Lay them on their side.
Yeah, put 'em, put a hat on them. I'm not making an ear. So,
Oh, man.
so a lot of it is that old, but then what we do is we have the open casket viewing, and then the person's cremated afterwards. So you save all of that.
Do the deceased in an open casket, do they wear shoes and socks?
If people bring them in, we put them on them.
Really? You
Yeah,
do?
yeah. Sometimes they don't fit.
Underwear? Do they wear underwear?
Anything that you bring in, we will put it on them. And usually, if the people don't bring underwear, we try to, we got like extra underwear. So I remember one time, a friend of mine, his mom passed away, and she was like the original Italian mama. She was just gorgeous. Always, had her hair all, bouffanted.
Oh, right.
Pitch black till her dying day.
Yeah.
You'd see the tiniest little roots, and then it was pitch black again. And she wore this bright pink lipstick. And I remember it was the morning of her funeral. So she had died several days earlier. She was obviously already in the casket. The services were about to start. And her husband comes in and says, "I forgot her girdle." And I thought, well, thank God. Who wants to spend eternity in a girdle? So that one time it worked out okay. She got to go in cotton panties and no Playtex 18-hour business. So
It'd be comfortable for your last ride there, for your long journey.
But people are getting even more. More and more people, even if they have a showing like that, they put them in their favorite sweater or their Packers gear, or it's not the everybody's in a suit and tie or anything.
Right.
Much more casual. A lot more people like, and that's another thing is like people come and they put stuff in the casket, and then those things are either buried or cremated with the person. Again, it might not be the ritual that you would want.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do find a lot of comfort in that.
Yeah, that sounds kind of sweet.
And that last moment right before Mass starts where, we're going to invite you forward to take your last leave by the casket.
Yeah.
And there's that ritual final seeing of the person. And it's not... Because I'm there when they had their last final seeing of the person. And a lot of times their eyes were open, their mouth was open. They'd been on a bed in the living room sick for months and months. They had,
I never thought of that.
Crappy jammies on and stuff.
So some of these people at the funeral, they saw the difficult...
Right.
They saw the
right.
I hadn't thought of that.
And so maybe that person's lost a little weight, and we can just puff out the cheeks a little bit because we get a picture. Oh, that's how. There was a woman one time. She lived out on a farm with 2 sons, and I mean they took really good care of her, but they didn't like take her for haircuts and stuff. So, when she died, she was in a nightgown and her hair was just like wild woman all over the place and stuff. Well, they brought in this picture and they said, "Oh, we don't think we can see her. We don't think we can have an open casket." And they brought in this picture. Well, their mom used to wear her hair in this cute little page boy, with the right at the chin line with the bangs and everything. And we brought in a hairdresser and she did her hair like that. And they were like,
"Oh, cool.
Ma,
okay."
And so all of a sudden it was, oh, that's who she was.
All right.
She had her little sweater on. And so there is...
I'm definitely hearing this. I'm thinking back, I was being a little mean earlier. I guess I'm hearing this. That makes sense.
Physically, though, I mean, the things that you have to do to preserve and restore and sanitize a body are not appetizing things.
No, I wouldn't think so.
So,
yeah. So you said most of your work is cremation in the final end.
Right.
Is there anything new? I've seen these ads for trees. where you get buried in a tree or something like that? What is that about?
All of that stuff.
I kind of like the idea of that.
The pod or the tree or something. I guess I just don't know what is their product for. You got the cremated remains and you get a tree and you dig a hole.
I'll tell you why I like it.
I don't know what the product does.
I'll tell you why I like it. Because I like the fact that I can go to where my mom and dad are buried. And I can go to a particular spot.
Yes.
And I like that. And so if anybody cares enough about me that they want to go to a place that really is very specific, that's why that whole idea of the tree, however that works, you put your ashes in the bulb of the tree, and then it's there.
Right.
And that's a very specific thing, as opposed to just, scatter in the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
So that's appealing to me. Well,
now then you're going to want to look into what's called natural burial. Did you ever see, are you a fan of 6 Feet Under at all?
Yeah.
Remember at the end, they wrapped Nate in a shroud. Spoiler alert, Nate died. They wrapped Nate in a shroud and they carried him into a meadow and they placed his unembalmed remains in the earth and they covered it back up.
Yeah, but that's illegal, isn't it?
No, there's places right here in Milwaukee you can do that.
Oh, okay. You can do that
like
legally.
at a cemetery.
You can do it legally.
At a cemetery.
All right.
But it's natural burial, and so there wouldn't be, a headstone with your name on it.
Okay.
But your family would have the coordinates. He's at the big rock next to the lilac bush.
And you could see. I like the idea of planting a tree right on top of me.
Right. Yeah.
So there is something there.
And I hear you when you say I like having a place to visit.
Yeah.
And so that's the one thing that's valuable about a cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
But does it need to be a cemetery? Does it, could it be a natural spot? Could it be, I don't know. I do like that something marks the place. And
I do too.
we get a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm taking the ashes home with me. I'm taking the ashes home with me." And it's like, "Okay, but recently we had a couple who moved into a house in town, and like down in the basement, they found some cremated remains. I mean,
wow. So somebody moved and left.
Right,
left
but like
Joe.
2 or 3 moves before. So
okay.
I mean, they Googled and tried, so they didn't know what to do. They brought it to us, and so we won't dispose of it. But
do ashes retain any DNA? Can you test ashes?
No, absolutely not.
They retain nothing.
No, they're absolutely retain nothing. No.
Okay.
The other new thing that's coming around is called, and I don't believe there's any in the United States yet, but I think they have them in Europe, in Scandinavia, is called resomation. And it's kind of like the cremation process, but it uses like high-powered water to dissolve, and it's like water and some kind of chemicals.
Yeah,
I'm assuming, and then it's kind of freeze dried, like Folgers coffee crystals.
Oh, I think I read it. I've heard of this.
And then what you end up with looks almost exactly like cremated remains, but there hasn't been any burning.
All right.
So no carbon emissions. But I don't think it's like just water. I'm sure there's some kind of nasty chemical that's involved with that too. But again, it's like a big, huge chamber.
This rings a bell. I remember reading about it, and I
believe it's
called
resomation, RESO.
I think the article I read said it was more environmentally responsible.
Right.
All right. Have you thought about your own funeral?
Oh God.
You want to be scattered anywhere?
You know what? No, I don't really.
Wow,
I don't really know. I mean, when I think about it, I know it would be at my church. I assume it's going to be goofy. You know? I mean, it'll be real spiritual and it'll be real silly.
So you have a church and you have
yeah. That's
you've got that community already kind of built in.
Yeah.
So you haven't thought about where you want to be scattered or told anybody?
I don't know that.
I love that you haven't thought about this. It's amazing to me.
And I don't know that I would need a marker. So many people ask us, "Oh, can you spread cremated remains here? Can you spread them there? Can you spread them there?" And basically, it's littering. There's nothing harmful in them. So
Yeah.
I always tell people
There are laws about it,
right,
but
right.
but it's not a
You'd have to
serious.
do it so obviously
Yeah.
to get. And I always tell people, if you got to do it at Graceland or Lambeau Field or something, you're going to have to Shawshank Redemption it. Put a little in your pocket, go out to the yard. And,
Yeah.
so I mean,
Okay.
I wouldn't mind if some night my sons took my cremated remains and just emptied them over the headstones of my parents.
Okay. Oh, that's nice.
That would be okay to me. I don't need a
Yeah.
stone that's, but again, I want them to have a place to go. They grew up planting flowers
Yeah.
at Grandpa's
Yeah.
Grandpa's stone. Grandma's name is already on it without the dates of death on that side of their family, and then Grandpa over here, who they never knew, is a couple of blocks over here in the cemetery, and Grandma will be there too. So.
And it always comes back to that for me.
Yeah,
I can let a lot of things go, but that's something I feel strongly about. I want my kids to have a place, a particular spot.
Right.
Whether
right.
they ever go there or not,
right.
that's up to them. But I want them to have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll figure that out.
Yeah.
As far as we started early in the conversation talking about planning the funeral, I'll try not to be too controlling from the other side as much as I want to. I don't like still thinking about my own funeral.
Mm-hmm.
This has become cliche. If I had a nickel for any time I heard people say, "Oh, I don't want you to cry and have a big have a party. I want everybody to have a." That's just so dumb. I don't get that.
Oh well, we have a.
I don't want anybody to have a party. I want you to come and wail and cry. Don't have a party. Don't
Fire
drink.
some mourners.
For God's sakes, don't drink at my funeral. Please, I'm just sitting there. Please don't drink at my funeral. Oh my God, it's not a party.
I did a funeral for a well-known tavern owner. This was some years ago, and I'll leave him unnamed. But so his tavern was too small for the funeral, so they moved it to the Moose Club. Classy. And so there was 2 rooms in the Moose Club, the room with the bar and then the big room where we were having the memorial service. And so no body or anything. This was like just an urn. And so as I got up to start the funeral service, the people who were in the bar opened the door but didn't come into the room.
They just wanted to listen?
They just wanted to listen. They didn't want to leave the bar. So I just did it extra loud. So I mean, there were some people in my room, but there was a lot of empty seats.
So then from your spot, you could hear the glasses clinkling.
Right. Oh,
and
exactly.
Cigarette smoke was wafting in.
Some people weren't even there for the funeral. Yeah, I thought, okay, well, he got what he wanted, I guess. So, yeah. And now everything is a celebration of life. A celebration of life will be held. You know. I guess.
I get it.
Yeah.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets back to what we were talking about. Poignancy, sad, happy, have some depth of feeling. Don't just have a party. I think that really just misses the whole point.
Yeah.
To my mind.
Yeah. And that's sometimes part of when you sit down with the family and you're planning the service and, how religious you want it, then I always just say, well, tell me about your dad.
Yeah.
And so then we go through, and it's not like every goofy story they tell is what I'm going to spit right back to them. You're looking for a kinesthetic response, and it's either laughter or it's tears. Yeah. Because that means, oh, I heard that when she talked about what a special person my dad was. Yeah, that was really true.
I was at a funeral. I sang at a funeral once, and the deceased, from what I could gather from this event and from what everybody said, was a real son of a bitch. Nobody could hardly think of one good thing to say about him. They all tried. They all loved him, brothers, sisters, parents. He was not an old guy. He was a younger guy. Parents were still alive. But they just went up there and went, oh, yeah, Chuck. boy, he had his problems. He treated us all like crap, and he drank like a fish, and they just couldn't think of one damn good thing to say about him.
So why would you open up the mic then? See, to me, that's a situation where you have the pastor come in, and even I would read a couple of Bible verses.
They would say that we loved him, and we're sorry he's gone, and he liked the Grateful Dead, and so they had me sing Ripple.
Right. Yeah.
So they talked about the things he liked.
Yeah.
And they tried to be respectful.
Right.
But I didn't hear one good thing about the man.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that? We're just a real SOB?
Oh, yes. Oh, very early on, I was doing a graveside service. And so they didn't have any service at the church. It was a full casket. It's going down into the ground, and the wife's there, and the daughters and everything. And I'm reading from my book, and I'm getting, like, nothing from them.
Yeah, okay.
Like, no sadness, no, stony silence. And so, I'm flipping through the pages, and I'm edit. Let's make this shorter.
Okay. You're editing on the fly.
And my boss comes up to me, and he goes, I'm like, what? Oh, God. Did I forget to tell you about this family? I said, well, apparently so. What's going on? Well, apparently on his deathbed, Dad had confessed to molesting all 3 daughters.
Oh.
None of them had known about the others, and the mother didn't know about any of it. And they did everything but spit on the casket and leave.
Man.
I was like, no, you didn't mention that. But maybe it was best I didn't know. Maybe it was just
I think you should have known. I think it should have been, okay, there you go. Thanks, Pops. Goodbye.
Yeah.
That should have been like a 30-second funeral.
There was other people there, though.
Okay, yeah. Wow,
and so,
I suppose.
And so you can only bring up, it's like for suicides.
Oh,
I say to people, are we talking about it?
It's up to them.
Right.
Yeah.
And some people don't, and other people will get up and say, my mom committed suicide. If you're having problems, talk to somebody.
Right.
Lot of heroin overdoses. So
people
who you say, oh, had your brother been sick long? He was a schizophrenic and he drank himself to death.
Yeah.
But that person's family still needs, even if it's just a direct cremation and they're not going to do anything, there's still some, like the guy, oh, Chuck was an asshole, but he was our brother.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they feel the need to do something. And then we have other people who are like, you try to find next of kin. Yeah, I don't care. Do what you want. Don't care.
Huh.
Don't call me. Don't call here again. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the whole gamut. The whole gamut.
Yeah, that's you got to deal with some stuff.
Yeah. And in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah. I got one last question to ask you. I didn't even want to because it's so pedestrian.
Uh-huh.
It's so cliche, but I have to ask you. What do you say to people? In other words, my friend's father dies. What do I say to my friend? What's the best thing to say?
I think the first thing you need to do is take off the pressure of feeling that there's a thing you could say that's going to make your friend not be sad that her dad's dead.
Okay, so take that away first.
Take that away first.
Okay.
Start with, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Start with, this must be so hard. This must be so difficult. Mm-hmm. So, and that can cover a lot of, it can cover if Kelly was real close to her family and her dad, or if Kelly's has been estranged from her dad. So you don't need to know the relationship between her and her dad to say, oh, Kelly, I'm so sorry. This must be so tough for you.
So I guess maybe better advice is what not to say.
Oh, and that's all the God needed another angel bullshit. All of the it's part of a plan.
Yeah.
That's where the religious
He's in a better place.
Oh God, that's where the religious stuff sometimes can just slap people silly, and I get so angry because it's so unhelpful. Well, he's with the Lord now, and okay, I mean, I get the concept of heaven and that's comforting, but sometimes
even if the mourner is a religious person, they still don't want to hear that.
Right. Unless you're their
pastor.
That's
important to know.
Yeah.
That's really important to know.
Yeah.
Just because you know full well, you're talking to someone you know well, a close friend, this person is religious. Mm-hmm. He's in a better place, or God has another angel. They don't want to hear that.
Not helpful. Yeah, not helpful.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
And this, I'm about 90% sure I'm going to edit this out.
Okay.
I swear to God, this is a confession. I think sometimes people get really maudlin beyond reason. It's like I told you, my mother died, my father died, I had a close friend who died. People die. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, are you serious? Get over it. Mm-hmm. 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 I understand grief. I've been through it.
Yeah, a lot of it is very attention-seeking behavior.
Oh, yes.
All of that, because you're the saddest one. Your loss is the biggest.
And they were she was the most wonderful mother that God ever put on this planet.
We were best friends. You didn't see her like I did. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you get a lot of that. People who need to have their needs met at the funeral.
Oh my goodness!
It can be very uncomfortable. Because very uncomfortable.
We just passed Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And it just brings to mind, because I see this on a smaller level. Every Mother's Day, every Father's Day, every kid's birthday, where people just go overboard. The most wonderful, the most beautiful, come on. We've all got a mother. I love my mother. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying, right? I guess everybody needs to have their own way of expressing themselves.
We had a woman one time. Well, this woman was the sister-in-law, and apparently she's a pastor at her church. So there was 11 people at the service in a room about twice the size of this tiny little booth that we're recording in. Uh-huh. And she brought a sound system. So for her praise songs.
Okay. All right.
And she was having trouble setting up the sound system. And somebody finally said, Sharon, we're all right here. We can hear you, But she just went on and on. And I mean, this is her brother-in-law.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes the drama queens or everybody. One thing that just kind of gets on me is everybody wants something. Who gets the cross in the casket? Can I get a rose from the casket? I didn't get a rose. All I got was a carnation. Oh, dear God. I don't care. It couldn't matter less,
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm one of the granddaughters. Oh, all right. Let me go knock down that old woman I just gave a rose to and tell her she's not closely enough related. And
even though in many respects, this is one of the biggest, most profound things that will happen to you in your life.
Right.
I mean, it really is. Let's give it its due.
Yeah.
And yet, people can still just come in with all the foibles that we have in other parts of our lives, and we just can be assholes and jerks, and it's not like they all go away just because we're mourners.
Right.
We're still us with all of our faults.
Yeah. And you know what? It helps. The closer to the death that the funeral is, the better everybody gets along. If you let it let it go too far, sometime like a couple of weeks or something,
that makes sense.
Then people, people have started to pick through their stuff and everything, and you need it to be a couple of days while everybody's still sad, and it just makes again, then your focus is correct. If it's 3 weeks later, you don't have that hyper focus because you can't. It's not sustainable. that hyper
Sure.
grief, that hyper focus.
You wouldn't want it to be.
You wouldn't want it to be. You could, they say agony and ecstasy, either one of them lasting forever would be super unpleasant.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, this was great. We're done, except to ask you, for the record, for the listeners, give us your information. I know you have a column. Is that still happening, right?
Yes.
And how often do you do it, and where can people find it?
It's once a month at the Kenosha News, so kenoshanews.com. And I work for Casey Family Options Funerals and Cremations in Kenosha. And so you can always reach me on their website or Facebook page. My next idea is trying to find how to bring this artistic sensibility, writing and speaking and performing, how to bring that gift into more of a tool that I can use as a funeral director. So this was kind of my first step out to say, well, what could I do that would bring more people into the conversation about what things are like now. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And we didn't really talk about it. We probably should have, but yeah, you have all this theater background,
right? And
you've been on stage, so your theater experience, it serves you well. I'm a big fan of what
definitely.
Theater can teach everybody.
Yes, absolutely. Eye contact, control of a crowd, being able to present yourself well, being able to, when you're on stage with somebody else, how you give them the focus, you give them the attention, and then the audience knows where to give their focus and their attention. Public speaking, timing, humor.
And it's not like we never have to face these issues. Most of us have to face it several times in our work, any kind of a public meeting or in church, or there's so many different occasions.
Right. Yeah.
Where these skills really come into play.
Yeah. Like I started out with sort of the throwaway degree, but it really, it's been the foundation for everything that I've done since then.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and actually it's funny because I've had this conversation with other people too. I'll scold you a little bit for don't use that joke anymore, throwaway degree.
Oh yeah.
Because we all do that. We'll say with air quotes, "Oh, I'm an artist," or "I studied philosophy," and we do these self-deprecating jokes.
Right.
But the value. I mean, my throwaway degree, which I'll never use that expression, was philosophy.
Right.
And it served me in everything else I've ever done.
In every way. And here's an idea that it's fallen out of favor, but gee, isn't that first 4 years of college just to kind of learn how to learn? So, and then once you know how to learn, you pick a topic and you learn about it. Once you know how to learn, well, then
it opens you up to ideas that you wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise.
Right.
It opens you up for ideas that you're going to come in contact with years down the road.
Right. Yeah.
You've been listening to Conversations with Charles Bursell. Today's guest, Patti Potter Fitchett, funeral director and columnist. If you'd like to listen again or recommend to friends, we're on all your favorite platforms. Best thing to do is just search Charles Bursell, or even better, Charles Bursell Presents. And we'll pop right up. iTunes, iHeartRadio, wherever you want to hear us. I invite you to listen to my other podcast, Stream of Consciousness Talk Radio Theater. Again, the same search will get you there. Thanks for listening.